Now, if you watch this program, you know that unlike the destroy Trump media, the establishment media, they're all groupthink and think alike every day. We think the truth is important and that you, the American people, you deserve to know what's really going on. And for weeks, we have been covering massive scandals, and we've been calling on the media, on Congress, to start investigating them. For example, there's this explosive report. Remember Politico back in January? Look at the headline we've been telling you about. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. Kiev officials are scrambling to make amends with the president-elect after quietly working to boost Clinton. Now, the scandal revolves around a one-time DNC operative named Alexandra Chalupa. She, along with Ukrainian government officials, worked during the campaign to hurt Donald Trump and help Hillary Clinton. It's in the Politico article. Just read it. Now, we put together a chart to better illustrate what has happened. According to Politico, Chalupa, who's a former Clinton White House employee, worked for years to try and expose former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Now, this includes by meeting with Ukrainian diplomats at the Ukrainian embassy, and Chalupa said that those Ukrainian diplomats were, quote, helpful when it came to finding information. Then there's this damaging quote about Chalupa in the article. She occasionally shared her findings with officials from the DNC and Clinton's campaign. So, from what Politico reported back in January, Chalupa tried to share information with the DNC and Hillary Clinton's. Oh, sounds like collusion. Now, we did once again. We reached out to this DNC operative for comment. We've yet to hear back. Now, Chalupa did provide a statement to fake news CNN. Here's part of it. During the 2016 U.S. election, I was a consultant for the DNC running an ethnic engagement program. I was not an opposition researcher for the DNC, and the DNC never asked me to go to the Ukrainian embassy to collect information. By the way, during a period of time, she made $412,000, according to Politico. Chalupa did admit that she did meet with the Ukrainian officials at the Ukrainian embassy, but now claims 6 months later that the topic had nothing to do with the election. Okay. Now, denial aside, now 6 months after this article comes out, there are so many questions that we need answers to, and our continued coverage on this scandal is now starting to get the attention of the Destroy Trump media and Democrats. And yesterday, even Congressman Adam Schiff was asked, finally, about Ukrainian election collusion. Take a look.
I understand Hillary Clinton lost. This effort was not as elaborate as the Russian effort. But was it acceptable, or would it have been acceptable for the Democrats to accept help from the Ukrainian government in this campaign?
No, it would be appropriate for the Democrats to accept help from the Ukrainian government. But I think if you look at the Politico article, and we're talking about just a single article here, if you accept all the facts in the article, the scale of what the Russians did is not comparable to anything in that article. It would be problematic to get any kind of support from a foreign government. But again, I think to compare the two is a bit like comparing bank robbery with writing a check with insufficient funds. Both appropriate money from the bank improperly, but a very different degree of seriousness and involvement, in this case, by a foreign government.
Not comparable. It's far worse. And President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, who will join us later tonight, was also bringing up, finally this weekend, this very important issue on the Sunday shows. Take a look at this.
Opposition research in campaigns happens all the time. You had the situation with the Ukrainians doing the same thing with the Democratic National Committee in the Clinton campaign. We know for a fact, as were reported extensively in an investigative journalist piece by Politico, that the Ukrainians were in direct contact with DNC officials and traded information back and forth. The fact is, you know, the Ukrainians at the very same time were working with the DNC and the Clinton campaign to give what? Opposition research on Donald Trump and his associates. But I go back to the Ukrainian example. I know you don't want to discuss it because you say it's not being investigated, which raises a question. But here, in the Ukrainian situation, they actually exchanged documents from a foreign government.
So finally, we got the establishment media to start talking about Ukraine interfering in our election. Now, we still need more answers from the people who headed the organizations that were involved. That includes Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She was the head of the DNC. She needs to be put under oath and testify before Congress about what she knew when she knew it. And the same goes for former Clinton campaign officials like John Podesta, because that DNC operative testified that she tried to share information with both the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Also, former Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook. He should be seated right next to Podesta under oath to tell you, the American people, what he knows. This is a serious issue, far worse than anything Trump-Russia. And, you know, going off my facts, in my opinion, it is worse than the black helicopter, tinfoil hat conspiracy theories you've been hearing about for 11 months. And with Ukraine, we have real evidence of collusion. We know real information was passed along and may have ended up in the DNC and Clinton campaign. We know that it did impact the election because Paul Manafort ended up resigning as Trump's campaign manager and chairman. All that evidence is why we are not going to stop covering this story until you, the American people, get the answers that you deserve. Also, another massive scandal that the media, establishment media, has not paid much attention to, and Congress needs to start investigating. And I'm talking about that Uranium One deal that we've been calling the real Russia conspiracy theory. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton signed off giving up to 20% of America's uranium, the foundational material for nuclear weapons, to who? Vladimir Putin. To Russia, the Russians. And while that was going on, people involved in that deal kicked back over $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. Bill Clinton doubled his speaking fees in Moscow. Doesn't that sound like something the establishment media, congressional investigators, Robert Mueller should be focused on, at least beginning to look into? Then there's the fake news dossier. Remember the op research firm Fusion GPS that has ties to the Hillary campaign, the Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood? Well, according to those reports, that phony dossier quoting Russians and the Ritz-Carlton and hookers was originally commissioned, okay, by a Republican donor, but eventually a Clinton ally ended up funding it. Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent, put this disgusting hit piece together, cited Russian government sources or sources tied to the Russian government. Doesn't that sound like colluding with a foreign government to interfere with an election to you? Then there's the law firm that has ties to both Fusion GPS, the Russian lawyer who was in that June 2016 meeting with Donald Trump Jr. What's disgusting about all this, the Democrats feigning moral outrage about the idea of Russia collusion, were perfectly willing to repeat information from that phony Christopher Steele dossier that used Russian sources in some cases. Well, doesn't that make Democrats complicit in this? Well, we'll let you decide. Take a look at what they were saying at about this phony dossier, which is proven false, citing Russians. Take a look.
Do you believe anything about that dossier?
Oh, I think it should be taken a look at. I think they should really read it, understand it, analyze it, and determine what may not be fact. We already know that the part about the coverage that they have on him with sex actions is supposed to be true. They've said that that's absolutely true.
I want to take a moment to turn to the Christopher Steele dossier, which was first mentioned in the media just before the election and published in full by media outlets in January. My focus today is to explore how many claims within Steele's dossier are looking more and more likely as though they are accurate. Well, the dossier definitely seems right on these points. A quid pro quo relationship seems to exist between the Trump campaign and Putin's Russia.
There is a lot in the dossier that is yet to be proven, but increasingly, as we'll hear throughout the day, allegations are checking out.
All three of these issues, Ukrainian collusion, the Uranium One deal, the fake news dossier, all involve actual concrete evidence, real collusion, real wrongdoing, real law breaking. Now, it's why we're not going to stop reporting. We're not going to stop covering these very important issues on the show, and we will demand the media do their job. The establishment media, MSNBC, CNN, fake news, 24/7, the same opinion all day. That's not the same here on the Fox News Channel. Joining us now, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, 7 weeks in a row on the list, Understanding Trump, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. So we've been trying to get an answer from this Chalupa lady. The article was written back in January. You have quotes from her in there. Doesn't deny it until tonight to CNN. I want her, Wasserman Schultz, Podesta, Mook, and Hillary under oath.
Well, and even in the story tonight, there are other people who are saying that she had told them that she thought she could get material that would hurt Trump. So even her denial, I think, may in fact not hold up when people look into it in more detail. But it's interesting, you know, there's this huge shock in the elite media that this Russian lawyer came to Trump Tower, etc. Well, there's not shock that this DNC operative went to the Ukrainian embassy. Oh, no, that's not really a problem because of this and that and the next thing. The double standard is so gigantic that it is, I think, to the average American, very obvious that it is a double standard. And again, notice the difference. We don't have any evidence that anything was done to collude. This is the key word. Where's the collusion? Where's the Russians working directly with Trump? There's no evidence. Furthermore, as several liberal lawyers have said, Harvard professors of law, under the First Amendment, you are allowed, with your free speech rights, to try to learn whether or not your opponent has a weakness, as long as you're not stealing anything. There's no evidence.
Turley.
You know, and he's saying, and both of them are saying, to try to turn this into a criminal case would be a direct assault on the First Amendment right of free speech in a campaign. And I think that the degree to which the elite media has tried to puff this up is just almost unbelievable.
So you have the Ukraine issue where a real meeting took place with a real DNC worker, operative, whatever position she wants to say that she had, saying in the Politico that, in fact, information was passed on that had an impact on the election. We have the corrupt Uranium One deal. I won't give the details. Everyone in this audience knows them. And then you have this phony dossier citing Russians, Fusion GPS, Democrats all hooked into them and paying money to this guy. Comey even wanted to pay this guy $50,000, and it was citing Russian sources with bad information. Why aren't the Republicans putting as much emphasis on this and saying, okay, if you're against outside countries influencing our elections, then we've got to investigate these issues?
Well, they should be. And as I said before in talking with you, I do think there's a very real grounds for the Congress to look at the totality of foreign influence peddling, foreign campaign influence, not just Russia, not just Ukraine, but as we have become the most powerful nation in the world, there are a lot of people around the planet who give grants to universities to shape what they're doing, who give grants to individuals, who hire lobbyists. You can use this New York Times, Washington Post hysterical language to describe anything. But the one that I think is the most intriguing, now that you've put your finger on, and I cannot understand why the Congress has not dug into it, is the scale of secrecy involved in the uranium deal. The fact that apparently there's this Canadian foundation which has to disclose what it does with its money or where its money comes from. As you pointed out, it gave millions and millions to the Clinton Foundation
145.
at a time when the secretary could have stopped it. I mean, the fact that that hasn't been investigated strikes me as just almost unbelievable.
It's breathtaking. It's as bad or worse in our enemy as the Democrats keep telling us. You were kind enough to point something out to me today in a private conversation we had about two reporters writing a book called Shattered, meaning that they expected Hillary to win, shatter the glass ceiling. Didn't exactly work out the way they wanted, but there's an interesting Russia side note to this. I'll let you explain.
Well, there really is, and it's a fascinating book. Anybody who's interested in politics, these two reporters had gotten, obviously in advance, to write a book about the election of Hillary Clinton. Suddenly, election night, like everybody else, they're faced with having to write a different book. So instead of having shattered the glass ceiling, it became how Hillary Clinton shattered her own campaign. And towards the end of the book, there's a whole section. I'm thinking about writing one of my newsletters on this. There's a whole section where Hillary, the day after the election, suddenly figures out, since it can't be her fault, close events and the Russians.
It's the Russians' fault. Russia made me do it.
So, and then she began talking about it had to be the Russians. Okay.
We'll cut more with Newt Gingrich right after the break. When we come back, I have my own list for the Republican Party. If they want to be successful in 2018, 4 to 5 things they need to do. We'll ask Newt what he thinks they need to get done. Then later, President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, will react to the media finally being forced to ask questions on these issues we're talking about, including Ukrainian collusion, and also tonight.
He's nothing but a con artist and a liar, and he's not a businessman.
Anti-Trump protests taking place across the country this weekend. Our cameras were there, and in a mini monologue tonight, I will expose how deep and psychotic this Trump hate has become. All that. And conservative political commentator Tommy Lahren gets the final word on the program tonight as we continue on this busy breaking Monday news edition.
For decades, Washington has allowed other nations to wipe out millions of American jobs through unfair trade practices. Wait till you see what's up. You are going to be so happy. We will protect our workers, promote our industry, and be proud of our history because we will put America first.
That was the president earlier today at the White House during a Made in America showcase of companies and products from all across this great country of ours. And if GOP lawmakers who beg to be elected, if they want to be successful in 2018, 4 key things they better get moving with some sense of urgency and accomplish by November of next year. I would say by the end of this year. They need to have completed, show they mean they're going to secure the border. At least 300 miles of the border wall need to be built. They also have to finance it and have a plan in place for the rest of the wall to be built. Second, Obamacare. I understand Senator McCain's sick. When he gets back, it needs to be repealed, replaced immediately. Third, there needs to be an energy revolution, as Secretary Rick Perry said today, so we create millions of high-paying career jobs in this country. And fourth, we better get that middle class, that corporate tax cut, that multinational corporation repatriation for these companies to invest in America and build factories and manufacturing centers. They don't get that done, they won't deserve re-election, in my opinion. We continue. Former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, author of the best-selling book, Understanding Trump. Mr. Speaker, those are the, add Neil Gorsuch and you got 5. The president handled the originalist. I would argue if those 4 things are not done, that there is a very strong possibility 2018 could be a shock election for the country. Not good for the Republicans.
Well, I think that's right. I think that the left clearly is going to turn out. The left hates Trump. They'll do anything they can to beat him. And the question is, one, can we have enough energy and drive among our base that they turn out? And 2, can we perform well enough that independents decide that they want to reelect us? And I think this comes down, in a sense, to your list, but also to a deeper sense of, do we represent prosperity, economic growth, higher take-home pay, more jobs, or not? Trump, you just had him, the president, a minute ago, talking about what he wants to do to make America great again. I think that he's in the right general direction. I personally believe they ought to do as much as they can on health care right now, but they shouldn't spend the whole rest of this year on one issue. They have also got to pass, I think, by Thanksgiving and get signed into law by Thanksgiving, a very large tax cut, retroactively designed back to January 1, to make sure that we have enough economic growth in 2018 that Republicans can run as the party of prosperity, of jobs, of higher take-home pay, and of economic growth. And I would say the highest focus ought to be on getting the tax bill through, because if we don't have economic growth next year, I think we're in real danger of having Speaker Nancy Pelosi in 2019. If we do get enough economic growth, I think, frankly, we'll probably get reelected.
And I think that's where the millions of energy jobs come into play. I think that's where you're right. I love the tax cuts being retroactive. That'll flood the economy with money and investment opportunities, factories, manufacturing centers, the things we talk about. But I'll take a first step on health care. I'll take health savings accounts opportunities, getting rid of the taxes associated with it. I'll take the opportunity for cooperatives and then getting it better, or just repeal it. If that's all they can do for now, do it. How important, why are you, look, we've been friends for 25 years. I was there emceeing the night you became the Speaker of the House. That's how far we go back, even further. My first interview, I think it was in 1990 with you. And here's my question. You have been urging me to be patient.
You were a mere child.
Because you have been urging me to be patient. I'm run out of patience with these Republicans. They asked for this opportunity.
I agree. I agree. I surrender. We've had 6 months of patience. It's time to perform. And I agree with you. I think that they have to go to first of all, you've had 6 months to look at what happened, what worked, what didn't. It's like a football team at half in the middle of, you got to take steps, you have to learn lessons. I think they've got to figure out how to do things faster, more simply. I like what you just said, frankly, about health care. If you can't pass the gigantic bill, tell me what you can pass, but get something done that starts to move us away from Obamacare. And I think on each of these things, whether it's infrastructure or it's controlling spending or it's reforming the bureaucracy, and by the way, the Veterans Administration is a great success story. I think it ranks second only to conservative judges in terms of how the president is starting to really move the country. Deregulation, big success, moving in the right direction. I met last Thursday with Secretary Zinke of Interior. He has got a great plan, moving in the right direction. Former commander of SEAL Team 6, bringing that kind of tough military approach to it. I see things moving in the right direction, but the Congress has got to pick doable things that they can actually get done and not just beat their head against a wall without getting anything done. So I'm on your side now.
Okay, it just took you a little longer because you are a more patient person. I'll cede that point back to you. But I will say this. I hope they just heard what you said. They don't get it done. They put their own power in jeopardy. You know, keeping your promises is good politics. Mr. Speaker, good to see you. Thank you.